The fifth kind. In July 2020, Eric W. Davis, astrophysicist and consultant for the Pentagon, went on prime-time television and declared that as recently as March 2020, he had briefed American Department of Defense with regard to the recovery of physical materials from off-world vehicles. The unit making these investigations has been renamed the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, and it operates within the Office of Naval Intelligence. This fact was only acknowledged in 2019, when the former chief of this group, Luis Elizondo, came forward and declared not only had this unit been operating within the Pentagon, albeit under a different name, but that he had headed this group up from 2007 to 2017. In these revelations, it was evident that a government policy had shifted after 72 years. From 1947 to 2019, the US government operated a policy of silence and debunking around the UFO phenomenon. President Truman had classified all official study of UFO phenomena when he signed the National Security Act of 1947. So when spokespeople for the Pentagon began to speak openly about these investigations in 2019 and 2020, it represented a significant shift. When US Navy officials were able to acknowledge that naval personnel had been engaging with UAPs, it too represented a significant change. But how is public knowledge of anomalous phenomena suppressed? How do the powers that be pressure experiencers and contactees into silence?
You know, in the years between 1947 and 2019, signals were constantly being made to tell people not to talk about things that relate to ET contact and the UFO phenomena. In that period, captains in civil aviation would find themselves flying a desk if ever they reported a close encounter with a UAP or UFO, even if the sighting had been corroborated by his colleagues in the cockpit, by cabin crew, by air traffic control, just as a signal that we do not talk about these things, least of all to the media. A captain would be removed from his position, and it's a strong signal we don't talk about these things. Also during that period, researchers who worked to expose covert operations and black ops relating to ET contact and UFO research would sometimes turn up dead. And we now know that the witnesses of the Roswell crash in 1947 were silenced with violent gag orders from US military, threats against husbands, wives, and children. And it was the pain on the families created by these appalling threats that motivated Edgar Dean Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, to speak for those people and to bring their stories to a wider audience. So the revelations in 2019 by US Navy regarding the encounter of the Tic Tac craft by the USS Nimitz, the acknowledgement that the Navy has been engaging with UFOs for decades, was a massive turnaround in government policy. Also in 2019, we had Luis Elizondo going on national television and talking about the Pentagon's unit for investigating materials from UFO crash retrievals. No consequences, and a former operative within a Pentagon-controlled investigative unit.
Out front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November Luis Elizondo.
It's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar return.
Now in 2020, we have Eric Davis going on national television and saying that he has briefed American Department of Defense as recently as March 2020, briefing a unit called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force on materials retrieved from UFO crashes. Again, it's an acknowledgement of the existence of this task force within the Office of Naval Intelligence, a unit that was not supposed to have existed since 1947. It is a massive change in policy since 1947, when President Truman classified all official UFO research under the National Security Act.
But how is public knowledge of anomalous phenomena suppressed? How do the powers that be pressure experiencers and contactees into silence? The Fifth Kind. Click on the links in the description to watch the full video.
Author and researcher Paul Wallace probes the world's ancient mythologies for clues about the origins of the human race, and has published several books in the field of mysticism and spirituality. In the last decade, his work has probed the world's ancient mythologies for the insights they hold on our origins as a species and our potential as human beings. Paul's work in church ministry has included training pastors in the interpretation of biblical texts, working as a troubleshooter for communities of faith, and serving as an archdeacon in the Anglican Church in Australia. His background as a senior churchman makes it all the more surprising that Paul's latest book argues that human origins lie in our prehistoric contact with extraterrestrial species. You can find out more information and links to Paul Wallace in the description below, along with links to his published works.